Alright, so the next assignment essentially is we're going to unwrap this oven. So let's go ahead and hide everything but this. And let's take a look at what we get out of the box in our UV editor here. So it's kind of laid out. It's got some stuff going on. What we want to do is essentially, there's a couple ways of going about doing this. We can insert a loop down the middle of this whole piece. So for example, I can just go in here, shift right click, go to insert edge loop, and just, if done correctly, I can just click on this edge and run loops down. The problem with that is if you have things like this, where you have essentially a n-gon, see this front face here? We have one, there's a hidden edge down there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges. So this is actually kind of considered illegal. So if we go in and select those, and then shift right click and then just do connect components, it'll connect a line there, and then that'll get rid of that n-gon. And then when we go back in here and get rid of these verts, or actually let's undo this back to where we didn't even add that edge. So you could see that edge didn't go all the way through because we had an n-gon there. So if I go to vertex mode, connect these two, and I'm holding shift and right click and going to connect components. Now I bet you if I insert an edge loop, it'll at least go through the bottom there. Yeah, see how it went through the bottom? But the problem is this face here is a giant n-gon too. So there's a couple things we have to do. There's a lot of cleanup and a lot of love that has to go into this piece. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is clean up and unwrap as we go. So what I tend to do is I go to my UV mode, I select all the UVs that make up this model, and then I go to edit, and then I just delete them all. So I'm starting with a fresh palette. Let's go ahead and start with the top and work our way down. So I'm going to click this and then hide this to click. I'm going to hit F to focus. Now there's a bunch of stuff that we don't see, like this bottom face, so I could delete this. And if you know your stove's never going to move, like I'm never going to take it off this wall, I'm just going to delete that back face. So we essentially get this. Now to unwrap this, I'm going to double click it, I'm going to hold shift and right click and go to mapping, and then planar map that on Z, which is this front axis. And then just like any other box object, I just select the two edges where the plane change happens. And really it should be, this is where the plane change starts. Here's another plane change. I'm holding shift by the way as I go around. Let me hit 4 so you can see that. So I selected all those edges. Let me hit F to focus. And then inside of here I'm going to hit Control X, and you can see, Shift X in here. You can see it added a thicker line, so that's our UV cut. You can also go over here and just do cut, Shift X. Now I'm going to go to UV mode, highlight that, hit unfold, and then click unfold again. And what I tend to do is, let's see, we got to narrow it down here. Let's see, two polygons are connected by their interior edges. Okay, so that's interesting. What I think I'm going to do, and I am pretty sure I need to do this, is with this selected, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to mesh, and I'm going to turn on the option box next to cleanup. And what this does is this model, from importing and rotating and shifting and all this stuff, it kind of got a lot of n-gons and dirty geometry. So it says fixed by tessellation. You have faces with more than 4 sides, and we know we've got those. Faces with holds, non-planar faces. Now faces with holes is kind of a problem because we deleted that bottom face that's being hidden inside of there. And we also want to fix non-manifold geometry, and that's faces that are flipped inside out and all these other weird places. So I'm going to go ahead and hit clean up here, let it get cleaned up. You can see it showed me all the areas that need to be cleaned up. And so it did an okay job. I mean, honestly, I probably would have done what I did before. I just threw one edge across, but it kind of triangulated some of it. So I'm actually going to undo that one more time. And let's do that cleanup process. Let's do mesh cleanup. And I think I'm going to select, let's see, geometry only. And let's do normals and geometry. And then I think that's pretty good. Yeah, we really just want to do this object. Let's see what, I think it makes everything triangulated, which is what I don't want. Yeah, it did that. That's not what I want. So, alright. I think for now, for cleanup, the default settings are fine. So let's do that one more time, mesh cleanup. And we want to do this. I am going to turn on concave faces. It'll kind of flatten it out a little bit. So any faces that kind of look weird. All right, so let's try this now. In here, we'll have to do a little bit of cleanup or a little bit of love because there's some stuff going on here. But we'll do that piece by piece. All right, so let's try that again. I'm going to hide everything but this, and then we go to face mode and highlight everything but this. That's still deleted, and let's go back to our UV editor and see if those edges are still there, and let's see if we can unfold it. Now, if it doesn't, there we go. So that seemed to work. It cleaned it up. But if it doesn't, the last ditch effort is to delete history and make sure your transforms are all clean. So if I go to object mode here, it's got a little bit of translation issues and stuff like that. So I tend to just kind of freeze transform, center pivot, delete history, and it cleans it all up. All right, so because this is at the top, I tend to always unwrap things so they're at the top up here. And I just kind of power through the next phase in the process, which really, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't need to unwrap all of these. I really just need to unwrap just one and then re-rotate it around this setup. So what I'm going to do is unwrap one of these and just one of these top panels, and then I'm going to delete all this stuff again and just duplicate it. Now you might be thinking, well, why didn't we do that from the beginning? And if you are, that's really smart. Now in the learning or the teaching process of it, you usually learn how to model, then unwrap, then texture, sort of in that order. But when you're actually working in industry or working on your stuff, you tend to do it all as one fell swoop because you've done it so much that you already know the process or what's coming. So with that said, I'm only going to double click one of these and this, and I'm going to hide everything but that. I'm going to hit F to focus. Now with these, I did a good job of cleaning that up, and with this one, I'm not really worried about a lot of this stuff. So let's hit F to focus. All right, so with this one, this is an easy one. Shift right click mapping. I'm going to planar map on Y because the Y axis is facing upwards, and that's the direction that we're going to be looking at this. And then again, this is, even though it's a cylinder, well, you can unwrap it two ways because it's got a lot of quads in there, so it can be treated as a box. But all I'm going to do is hit Shift and X in here, and then I'm going to select both, hold Control, right click to UV shell, or you can highlight just a bunch of these UVs going this way inside the scene. And if it lets me, I think it's because everything is hidden, but if I select across, you can see it grabbed all the UVs that go this way. And then you can go, let's see, I know you can shift right click, or sorry, I think it's control right click to UV shell. Or I know one of the buttons in here, let's see, select, you get to this point where you don't really do a lot of this. Oh, here, I think it's in here. Let's see, arrange and layout. It's actually this button here where you hit all and it'll select all your UVs. And then, yeah, I think that's it. And then you can also hit Alt F12, I think, or F12 rather. Let's see. I believe under Select Components, yeah, Alt F12 and then UV Shell, and that's another way of selecting your UV Shell. So Tool Select and then Components, UV Shell. But again, I like to just hold Control and right click and then go to UV Shell. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my Unfold button here, and it's going to look a little weird because and what I did there is I just double clicked it to select all of it, is another way of doing your UV shell. Here we need to actually cut one of these edges so that it unwraps in a straight line. So I'm just going to select one of those edges, hit Shift X, double click this, and hit Unfold over here. So with that said, we only really need one of these burners. So I'm going to hit R to scale this down, and I'm going to scale this a bit more down here. And let's get this in here too. Let's hit Unfold one more time. And all of this stuff tends to change as you continue to work on your piece. Here, I'm going to shift right click. I'm actually just going to extract this face because I'm going to rotate it around this. And let's go to object mode. And I'm going to select both of these. Now it looks like, yeah, this and this I'm going to select. And on this guy, let's go to face mode. And I'm going to map it on the y-axis. I'm going to hit F to focus. Then I'm going to go to edge mode here. Double click each one of these edges. And I'm going to hit Shift X here. And then I'm going to unfold that. Boom, we're done. Let's move this down. Let's rotate this. And I'm going to straighten this out a little bit more. And the reason we're getting this weird axis is because it's kind of at a rotation and they're slowly pivoted. Ordinarily, if you would have hit that, it would have given you a little bit of stretching, but this thing is so small that it really doesn't matter. Same thing with these. I'm just going to stack them on top of each other. So what I tend to do is place them like this, and I rotate them out. And then an easy way to get them is to just stack shells, which is align and snap. Oh, I'm sorry, arrange and layout, stack and orient, or stack shells. And you can see it stacked them pretty good, which is fine. That's about where we want to be. And this can be pretty small here. Because the piece itself really isn't that big in the scene. We're probably going to just slap a color on it. So if we select this and this, we can see, well, you know, I'm going to place this. And what I did is I held Control and I right-clicked two UVs. Or if you have them both selected and you hold Shift and right-click or right-click, you can go to Vertex. So you can select the vertex on two different objects. So you can go to face mode, you can right-click, go to UVs. So, and as I mentioned before, let's go to shell here. This is going to be super tiny. I might even just place it in here. Just being conscious of the UV space. So maybe something like this. Alright, now the trick is, I'm going to shift right click. I'm just going to start breaking this apart. So with this whole thing selected and holding shift and right click, I'm just going to separate this whole object. And one thing we want to do is in object mode, we want to clean it. So if you ever get that error where it won't let you separate, you have to delete the history and then separate it. And now what I'm going to do is just go in here, just start deleting all of this stuff. Alright, I'm going to go to my top view, hit F to focus, and I'm going to hit D. So let's actually center pivot on this for a second. So center pivot. Then what I'm going to do is press D. And what D allows you to do is, just as a reminder, it lets you move your pivot point. So this little guy here, I'm going to delete this one too because it's not necessary. And I'm just going to hit E to rotate, and I'm going to hold Shift. I'm just going to position this where I want it to be. Now this one tends to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to scale that in. And then I'm going to select this again, hit E, and then hold Shift and rotate it. Now the power behind this is, let's actually move this in just a little bit here. It is in the right location. You see the distance, but I sort of was liking how they were overlapping. So I guess what I can do is scale them all up later. So let's go ahead and select all three of these, hit Shift and then right click combine. Then I'm going to just hit R, scale it down, and then W and then D again. And I'm going to hold V, and that'll let me snap it to the vertex here. See how it snapped the vert to that panel. And I actually need to clean up my perspective camera. It's kind of getting a little screwed up. So with that, I can go to edit and then duplicate special. And make sure that we are across the x-axis. And let's see if it screws us up a little bit because our transforms aren't perfect. No, looks pretty good. And I'm going to select both of these and just scale them in. And actually, I think I want one more of these on the top and bottom. So I'm going to duplicate face, go to object mode, center pivot up here, hit D and then V, and let's snap this here. And let's freeze transformations. I'm going to hit E, rotate it up here. Let's just do -90. And let's hit hitting E to rotate. Let's hold Shift, and then let's do 180. Maybe -90 or just 90. Yeah, just 90. All right, so let's combine all of these together. So something like this, and now you can see if we select this and this loose one here. If we go to our UV editor, they're all stacked nicely right on top of each other. So if we go in here to combine these pieces here, so I'm going to shift right click, just go to combine, or you can go up to mesh, combine here. Then I hold shift, we've got essentially our entire, this unwrapped pretty easily. This is the top of our oven. All right, with that said, these are pretty done. I'm going to select, yeah, looks pretty good. So I'm just going to select the pieces I know are unwrapped, which are these. And then I'm going to hold shift and right click and then combine that. Freeze transform, center pivot, history, and then in the next video what we'll do is we'll continue on with the rest of the character, or the rest of the oven. And hopefully we'll, actually before I do that, let me show you how to recover this crashed one. So I'm just reopening Maya. And because I have autosave on, off in the left hand side of my Maya thing, I should get the crash report of the last object. You can see it's right here. So if I double click that, and what you want to do immediately after this appears, right? So I'm going to right click, assign existing material, maybe assign a new material here, and just call this m_oven. And I'm going to immediately save this scene because we need to do that with this scene because now it's kind of this crash scene. So this is my second iteration of my cottage house. That's where everything is in one piece. And I'm going to call this oven UVs. All right, now then in the next video we'll continue on from here.